the overgrown garden. The scent of burnt toast hung in the air, a testament to Jake's attempt at breakfast. Maya coughed, waving a hand in front of her face. Seriously, Jake, you almost set off the smoke alarm again. He grinned, unabashed. Adds character, don't you think? Besides, he added, gesturing out the kitchen window, it's better than the smell wafting in from that. That was Mrs. Gable's garden. Or, what remained of it? It was less a garden and more a chaotic explosion of green, a riot of weeds and untamed vines that spilled wantonly over the low stone wall separating their property from hers. It had been charming at first, a sort of whimsical wildness, but the novelty had worn off quickly as rogue tendrils began snaking across their meticulously manicured lawn. Maya sighed, picking at the edge of her slightly charred toast. We should really say something, Jake. It's starting to get out of hand. Out of hand? Maya, it's practically staging a hostile takeover. He dramatically clutched his chest. My precious petunias are being suffocated. I can practically hear their floral screams. She managed a smile. Okay, drama queen. But seriously, it's creeping further every day. I'll handle it, Jake declared, puffing out his chest. Operation Gable Garden Grabback begins now. He grabbed a pair of gardening gloves from the drawer, a mischievous glint in his eye. An hour later, Maya found him outside, wielding a pair of garden shears with exaggerated precision. He was hacking away at the encroaching vegetation, muttering under his breath. He donned a straw hat he'd found in the garage, giving him the air of a disgruntled farmer. What are you doing? She asked, trying to suppress a laugh. Strategic pruning, he announced, snipping a particularly stubborn vine. Reclaiming our territory, one weed at a time. He tossed the severed vine onto Mrs. Gable's side of the wall with a flourish. Consider that a warning shot, Gable, he muttered, just loud enough for Maya to hear. Maya winced. Jake, be nice. She's probably just not able to keep up with it. Maybe she should hire someone then, he retorted, his good humor fading slightly. It's affecting our property value, you know. And my sanity. Later that afternoon, Maya was tending to her own small flower bed, carefully watering her prize-winning roses. That's when she saw it, a thick, thorny weed, its roots burrowing stubbornly through the soil, its leaves entwined around the stem of her favorite lavender plant. A creeping invader from that garden. A wave of anger washed over her, hotter and more immediate than she expected. It wasn't just about the garden anymore. It was about boundaries, about respect, about the slow, creeping feeling that their new life, so carefully cultivated, was being threatened by something beyond their control. She yanked the weed out with a fierce tug, a chunk of lavender root coming with it. The plant slumped, wounded. Guilt pricked at her. She damaged her own flower in her rage. That night, as she lay in bed, the scent of lavender faint in the air, Maya couldn't shake the image of the weed, its roots stubbornly clinging to the earth. She knew they couldn't ignore the problem any longer. But confronting Mrs. Gable felt like a betrayal, a mean-spirited attack on a vulnerable old woman. Jake, she whispered into the darkness, we need to talk. A gnome-sized plan. Seriously, Maya, another prize-winning petunia? The woman's garden is an affront to everything. Jake slammed his car door with unnecessary force, the echo bouncing off the pristine hedges separating their rental from Mrs. Gable's manicured masterpiece. Maya sighed, fumbling with her keys. It's just a garden, Jake. And she seems to enjoy it. Enjoy torturing us with its perfection, more like. I swear, I saw her pruning roses with a laser pointer this morning. He followed her up the walkway, his voice dripping with mock indignation. We slave away all day, come home to our perfectly adequate yard, and then get bombarded with floral superiority every time we look out the window. Maya unlocked the door, the scent of lavender potpourri hitting them as they stepped inside. Maybe we should try planting something. A little competition could be fun. Jake scoffed. Fun? Maya, we'd be crushed. Reduced to mulch by her green thumb of doom. He tossed his keys on the small table by the door, the metal clattering against its surface. No, something drastic is required. Something gnome-sized. Maya raised an eyebrow, already sensing the storm brewing in his eyes. Gnome-sized? What does that even mean? He grinned, a mischievous glint sparking in his expression. Remember Mrs. Gable's extensive collection of garden gnomes? The one she dresses in tiny little outfits for every holiday? Yes, vaguely disturbing, aren't they? Disturbingly perfect, Jake corrected. That's the problem. So, I was thinking, a little relocation project. A temporary gnome migration, if you will. Maya's eyes widened. You're suggesting stealing her gnomes? Borrowing. Jake corrected quickly. Temporarily relocating them to a place where they can be appreciated by a wider audience. Like the park. Jake, no. That's wrong. She'd be devastated. Maya walked into the kitchen, grabbing a bottle of water from the refrigerator. Devastated. Jake followed, leaning against the counter. Come on, Maya, it's just a prank. A harmless bit of fun. We'd put them back eventually. Maybe even leave a little note. Gone gnoming. Back soon. He wiggled his eyebrows, trying to make her laugh. She didn't. It's still stealing, Jake. And it's mean. She's an old woman. What if she has a heart attack when she sees they're gone? Jake's face softened. Okay, heart attack is a bit extreme. But think about it, Maya. Imagine the look on people's faces when they stumble upon a gnome convention in the park. It would be legendary. We could even dress them up in hats. He was wearing her down. Maya knew it. She hated when he used his charm like this. And what if we get caught? Caught? Jake feigned shock. Maya, we're stealth ninjas. Masters of disguise. Besides, he added, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, isn't it just a little bit tempting to dethrone the queen of the cul-de-sac, just for one night? Maya hesitated, the image of the gnome scattered throughout the park, bringing unexpected joy to strangers, flickering in her mind. It was a stupid idea. She knew it. But? Just for one night, she asked, the words barely audible. Jake pumped his fist in the air. That's my girl. Operation Gnome Liberation is a go. Operation Gnome Rescue. Maya adjusted the black ski mask, the wool itchy against her skin. Are you sure about this, Jake? She whispered, her breath fogging in the cool night air. Jake, already halfway across the street, gave her a theatrical wave. Operation Gnome Rescue is a go. Don't chicken out on me now, Rodriguez. He flashed a thumbs up, the beam of his flashlight dancing across the neatly trimmed hedges of Mrs. Gable's yard. She sighed, the weight of the half-empty burlap sack heavy in her hand. Gloves. Check. Flashlight. Check. Dubious moral compass. Questionable. She hurried to catch up, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. This whole thing felt wrong. Mrs. Gable hadn't actually done anything. She just existed, with her perfectly manicured lawn and her army of ceramic gnomes. Remember the plan, Jake hissed, crouching low as they reached the edge of the property. Hit the garden gnomes closest to the street first. Quick and quiet. Maya nodded, her heart hammering against her ribs. She felt ridiculous, like a character in a badly written heist movie. The beam of her flashlight trembled as she scanned the yard, spotting a gnome fishing in a miniature pond. She crept towards it, the crunch of gravel under her sneakers amplified in the stillness of the night. Easy does it, Jake breathed, already wrestling with a gnome wielding a tiny pickaxe. The fishing gnome was surprisingly heavy. Maya grunted as she lifted it, its pointy hat brushing against her cheek. She carefully placed it in the burlap sack, the ceramic clinking softly against its new companions. They worked in silence for a few minutes, a strange ballet of stealth and silliness. Maya managed to liberate a gnome pushing a wheelbarrow and another inexplicably dressed as a Viking. Jake snagged a gnome playing the banjo and one that looked suspiciously like a miniature Santa Claus. Then disaster struck. As Maya reached for a particularly grumpy-looking gnome guarding a bird feeder, her foot caught on a root. She stumbled, the gnome slipping from her grasp. It hit the ground with a resounding thud, the sound echoing in the otherwise quiet neighborhood. Maya froze, her blood turning to ice. She could feel Jake's eyes on her, wide with panic. The porch light flickered on at Mrs. Gable's house. "Run!" Jake mouthed, grabbing the burlap sack. They scrambled back towards the street, their hearts pounding in unison. Maya risked a glance back. Mrs. Gable stood silhouetted in the doorway, peering into the darkness. They didn't stop running until they were safely back in Jake's driveway, breathless and adrenaline-fueled. He dropped the sack of gnomes onto the pavement with a thud. "That was intense," Jake said, his voice still shaky. He peeled off his ski mask, running a hand through his messy hair. Maya pulled off her own mask, her face flushed. "Intense? That was insane. We almost got caught." She glared at the sack of stolen gnomes. "What are we even going to do with these?" Jake grinned sheepishly. "I haven't exactly thought that far ahead." A glimpse of history. The ceramic gnome's gaze, a painted leer, crawled up Maya's skin in the shed's gloom. Surprised by its heft, she carefully hoisted it. "Another casualty," she murmured, adding it to the bulging cardboard box. "Move it, Leadfoot," Jake chided from the entrance, his voice edged with impatience. "We're drowning in these things. Think of the Insta-fame." He vibrated with nervous energy, practically buzzing. Sighing, Maya bent for the next gnome. This one, sporting a ludicrous fishing rod, lurked behind stacked terracotta pots. As she reached, her fingers snagged on something unyielding and flat. Extricating it, she found a framed photograph, its glass hazed with age. Wiping away the grime, she revealed a girl staring back. Barely a woman, she wore a stiff military uniform, her expression a fragile blend of pride and unease. Maya's breath caught. Though faded, the girl's eyes held a weight that belied her tender years. "What you got there?" Jake asked, nosing over her shoulder. Lost in the girl's steady gaze, Maya didn't respond. The image resonated with significance, like a secret she'd stumbled upon. "Just hurry," Jake urged, tugging her sleeve. "Time's wasting. Operation Gnome Emancipation can't be held up by dusty relics." Reluctantly, Maya placed the photo on the potting bench. Abandoning it amidst the chaos felt wrong. Grabbing the fishing gnome, its painted eyes seemed to mock her disquiet. As she carried it to the box, a wave of remorse swelled. It wasn't solely about the gnomes anymore. This shed, this neglected corner of Mrs. Gable's world, housed fragments of her life, echoes of her past. They were absconding with it all, chunk by chunk, for a foolish prank. "Jake," she began, her voice barely audible. "Who?" He was already halfway to the house, arms overflowing with gnomes. "Don't you think, aren't we pushing it a bit?" She mentally winced at her own hesitancy. Why couldn't she just stand her ground? Jake paused, his earlier ebullience fading. "What do you mean, pushing it? It's just a gag, Maya. She won't even notice." "But what if she does?" Maya indicated the shed, the photograph on the bench. "What if these things matter to her?" Jake scoffed. "She's ancient, Maya. She probably forgot she even owns them." He paused, a fleeting shadow of doubt crossing his features. "Look, we can always put them back, right? Once we've had our fun. No harm, no foul." He flashed a reassuring grin, the kind that usually disarmed her. "Come on, let's finish this." Maya hesitated, her gaze drawn back to the shed. The girl in the picture seemed to follow her, a silent reproach in her eyes. She knew, deep down, that returning the gnomes wouldn't undo the deed. The very act was a trespass. But Jake was already heading towards the house, whistling a mindless tune, and the prospect of confronting him, of initiating a debate, felt like a monumental task. She sighed, hoisting another gnome. "Fine," she mumbled, her voice swallowed by the whispering leaves. "Fine." Park bound. The gnome stared blankly from the back seat, their painted eyes reflecting the streetlights blurring past. Grumpy Gus, Drowsy Dave, and Prissy Pam, a ceramic trio kidnapped under the cover of darkness. Maya kept glancing at them in the rearview mirror. They looked less whimsical now, more like silent judges. The silence in the car was thick enough to choke on. Jake fiddled with the radio, skipping through static lace stations. He usually had some upbeat song blasting, something to sing along to, badly and enthusiastically. Tonight, the air remained stubbornly empty. Maya gnawed on her lip. The thrill of the heist, the adrenaline-fueled laughter, had evaporated, leaving behind a gritty residue of unease. "Jake," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the hum of the engine. He didn't respond, just drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. The park was only a few blocks away now. She could practically smell the damp earth and the decaying leaves. "Jake," she repeated, a little louder this time. "Maybe we should turn around." He finally looked at her, his brow furrowed. "Turn around? Why?" "I don't know," she mumbled, avoiding his eyes. "It just doesn't feel right. Mrs. Henderson, she probably really likes those gnomes." The image of the elderly woman tending her garden, her frail hands carefully watering her flowers, flashed through Maya's mind. Guilt tightened its grip on her stomach. Jake sighed, a puff of air that seemed to deflate some of his earlier exuberance. The streetlights painted fleeting stripes across his face, highlighting the slight stubble on his chin. "Maya, we're almost there. We planned this. It'll be funny, I promise. Think of the pictures we can take." He tried to inject some of his usual playful energy into his voice, but it fell flat. The idea of arranging the stolen gnomes in ridiculous poses suddenly seemed less hilarious, more mean. She looked back at the gnomes again. Drowsy Dave seemed to be staring directly at her with an expression of profound disappointment. She shivered. "But what if she notices they're gone?" Maya asked, her voice laced with worry. "What if she's upset?" Jake shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "She probably won't even realize. Old people forget things all the time." Maya flinched. That sounded callous, even for him. And it wasn't true. Mrs. Henderson was sharp as a tack. She remembered Maya's birthday every year, without fail. "Jake, please," she pleaded, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. "Let's just go home. We can put them back tomorrow, before she wakes up." He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white. "No, Maya. We're doing this." He didn't meet her gaze. The car swerved slightly as he made a sharp turn, pulling into the park's deserted parking lot. The headlights illuminated the looming shapes of trees, their branches skeletal against the night sky. The air smelled of damp earth and something else, decay. Gnomes in the night. The playground stood barren, the swings motionless, like unkept promises swaying gently in the breeze. Maya hugged the wicker basket tighter, a faint rattle emanating from the ceramic gnomes nestled within. "Are you certain about this, Jake?" she murmured, her question swallowed by the susurrus of leaves. Jake, reliably buoyant, flashed a grin. "Loosen up, Maya. It's all in good fun. Think of Mrs. Gable's expression when she spots them." He snatched up a gnome wielding an absurdly large fishing pole and strode toward the ancient oak reining over the park center. Maya lagged behind, a knot of unease twisting in her gut. Each footfall felt leaden, each sough of wind through the leaves, a hushed censure. Reaching the tree, she saw Jake already had the angler positioned, rod angled towards an invisible pool. "Perfection, wouldn't you agree?" he asked, his face alight. Maya forced a smile. She retrieved a gnome sporting a scarlet cap and pushing a wheelbarrow overflowing with painted pebbles. "Where do you want this little fellow?" "Him, by the roots perhaps?" As if he's bearing tributes to the arboreal gods. Jake chuckled. They labored in near silence for a few minutes, deploying the gnomes around the oak. One, with a lute, seemed to serenade the bark, while another, armed with a miniature pickaxe, apparently mined for acorns. The tableau felt bizarrely contrived, a tiny invasion of manufactured delight. Maya couldn't dispel the sensation of being scrutinized, as if judgmental eyes lurked in every patch of shadow. The air chilled as the moon ascended, stretching distorted shadows across the turf. Nocturnal sounds amplified, the trill of crickets, the distant ululation of an owl, the disquieting groan of the aged oak as the wind picked up. What had commenced as a lark now felt like a genuine trespass. "Did you hear something?" Maya whispered, flinching slightly. Jake halted, clutching a gnome costumed as a conductor. "Hear what?" "Crickets, Maya." "You're imagining things." No, it was something different. Almost like footsteps. She strained, her pulse quickening. Jake sighed, but listened attentively. Probably just someone walking a dog. "Quit worrying." He perched the maestro gnome on a low branch, its minuscule baton poised mid-air. Voila! Leading the night orchestra. The jest landed with a thud. Maya failed to even crack a smile. She couldn't shake the sensation of exposure, of vulnerability beneath the moon's cold light. The park, formerly a haven of childish glee, now felt ominous, a realm where secrets whispered in the gloaming. "Let's just finish up, please," she pleaded, her voice taut. She picked up the last gnome, a sour-faced figure with a scowl and crossed arms. He appeared to mirror her own foreboding. As she set him near the tree's base, she was certain his tiny, critical gaze was fixed squarely on her. Caught in the act. The beam sliced through the darkness, pinning them like moths under glass. Maya gasped, scrambling back and nearly tripping over the tangle of roots she'd been so carefully avoiding moments before. Jake froze, his hand still halfway inside the hole he'd dug at the base of the ancient oak. "Well, well, well," a voice boomed, amplified by the stillness of the night. "What have we here?" Ranger Dave Miller emerged from the shadows, the flashlight now trained directly on their faces. Maya shielded her eyes, her heart hammering against her ribs. The damp earth clung to Jake's jeans, a dark smear against the faded denim. Just admiring the trees, Ranger, Jake stammered, pulling his hand from the hole as if burned. He tried a disarming smile, the kind that usually worked wonders. Tonight, it felt flimsy and inadequate. Dave didn't return the smile. He lowered the flashlight slightly, but the beam still glinted off the silver badge on his chest. "At 11 o'clock at night?" With a trowel. He raised an eyebrow, his expression skeptical. "That's some dedicated tree appreciation." Maya remained silent, the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. She couldn't meet Dave's gaze. The air hung thick with the scent of damp soil and pine needles, a smell that now felt accusatory. "We are?" Jake fumbled for an explanation, his charm deserting him. "We were just burying something." Dave's gaze narrowed. "Burying something?" "In a national park." Jake's eyes darted around, landing on the small, wilting sunflower he'd plucked from Mrs. Henderson's garden earlier that evening. It's a flower." "For the tree." A tribute." Maya wanted to disappear. A tribute? It sounded ridiculous, even to her. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. She wished she had spoken up before Jake had a chance to dig himself deeper. Dave chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that didn't reach his eyes. "A tribute, who?" "I've heard some excuses in my time, but that's a new one. Let's have a look, shall we?" He gestured with the flashlight towards the hole. Jake hesitated, then slowly knelt and began clumsily filling the hole with the loose dirt. Maya watched, paralyzed, as he frantically tried to cover their tracks. Each shovelful of earth seemed to amplify her guilt. "So," Dave said, his voice still deceptively mild. "Mind telling me why you felt the need to dig a hole to pay your respects to this old oak? There are plenty of perfectly good places to plant a flower in your own yard, or even a designated garden." Jake stood up, brushing the dirt off his hands. We just thought it would look nice here. Brighten things up a bit. Dave stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. Brighten things up? Or perhaps, transplant something? He paused, letting the question hang in the air. Something that wasn't yours to take. Maya flinched. He knew. She was sure of it. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the chirping of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. Jake's bravado had completely evaporated, leaving him looking small and vulnerable under the harsh glare of the flashlight. The truth revealed. Gravel crunched under approaching tires, shattering the afternoon's tranquility. Maya and Jake stiffened, their pilfered backpack forgotten at their feet, a porcelain elbow peeking from its depths. Startled, a robin burst from an oak, a scarlet streak against the leaves. Mrs. Gable's familiar blue sedan, usually a fixture of her driveway, shuddered to a halt beside them. Her face, normally etched with kind lines and a ready smile, was drawn with worry, her eyes glistening. Maya? Jake? Her voice, a mere thread against the cicada's chorus, trembled. What's going on here? Maya's stomach plummeted, the sun's glare seemed to amplify the absurdity of their ill-conceived gnome heist. She stammered, We were just. Jake, typically armed with a smooth alibi, was uncharacteristically mute, his usual swagger replaced by palpable unease. He scuffed at the ground with his shoe. Mrs. Gable unfolded herself from the car, each movement measured, heavy with weariness. Her gaze locked onto the backpack. Those are my gnomes, she stated, her voice fracturing. Maya wished the earth would swallow her whole. Guilt pressed down, a suffocating weight. She looked to Jake, silently begging him to offer some sort of explanation, some balm for this situation. Mrs. Gable reached the backpack. Instead of seizing it, her fingers traced the outline of a chipped gnome clutching a miniature fishing rod. They're more than just decorations, children. Her voice trembled with suppressed emotion. They're tributes. Each one represents someone special. A friend. A brother in arms. My husband, Thomas. She paused, fighting for composure. He served in the war. Lost so many brave souls. After he died, I started collecting them, each dedicated to a soldier who never made it home. This one, she indicated a gnome holding a tiny trowel, is for Billy. He always dreamed of planting a garden when he returned. The silence that descended was profound. Just then, Ranger Dave strolled into view, whistling a jaunty tune that abruptly ceased. He took in the scene, his expression clouding over. A sob threatened to erupt in Maya's throat. She gazed at the gnomes, no longer quirky lawn ornaments, but miniature, heart-rending memorials. Every flaw, every faded brushstroke, now whispered of loss and remembrance. Jake's voice finally emerged, his customary confidence replaced with raw regret. Mrs. Gable, we didn't realize. We thought they were just decorations. Shame burned on his face. We're so incredibly sorry, Maya choked out, tears now streaming freely. We never would have. If we had known. Mrs. Gable's gaze moved between Maya's tear-streaked face and Jake's evident distress. A sigh escaped her, laden with sorrow, yet laced with a fragile thread of understanding. I believe you, she murmured. Sometimes, young people don't consider things. She glanced at Ranger Dave, who remained a silent observer, his features grave. It's all right, Dave. They were ignorant. The backpack remained between them, a tangible testament to their thoughtlessness. The afternoon sun, once cheerful, now felt like a spotlight, exposing the magnitude of their error. A garden of friendship. Guilt, a cold stone in Maya's gut, had festered all night. Leading Jake this morning felt like wrestling an anchor up a hill. Mrs. Gable's porch seemed miles distant as they trudged closer. Usually buzzing with chatter, Jake was uncharacteristically subdued, scuffing a loose bit of gravel with his shoe. The door swung open before Maya could even rap her knuckles. Mrs. Gable's face, kind but lined with worry, betrayed no outward anger. That somehow intensified Maya's unease. Mrs. Gable, Maya began, her voice a mere thread. We are deeply, truly sorry. Jake shuffled forward, his usual bluster vanished. We were colossal jerks. No excuses. He towed the walkway. We took your gnomes. Mrs. Gable simply raised her eyebrows, waiting. It was a moronic prank, Maya blurted, the words tripping over themselves. We didn't consider how it would affect you. We just acted without thinking. Understatement of the year, Jake mumbled, earning a playful jab from Maya's elbow. Seriously, though, we're really sorry. And we brought them back. He nodded towards the lumpy burlap sack straining between them. A subtle smile finally graced Mrs. Gable's lips. Well, come in, come in. Let's reunite those little wanderers with their home. The gnomes, looking a bit worse for wear after their unsanctioned escapade, were gently coaxed from their confinement. One by one, Maya and Jake returned them to their places among the blossoms, feeling the weight of their transgression with each careful placement. My Harold adored those gnomes, Mrs. Gable murmured, observing their efforts. He used to weave elaborate tales around each one, inventing names and personalities. That little fellow there, the one with the fishing pole, he called him Finnegan. Claimed he was perpetually exaggerating his catches. She chuckled, a sound like delicate wind chimes. As they finished, Mrs. Gable surveyed her garden, a faint furrow appearing on her brow. It's become rather neglected lately. I haven't had the heart, truthfully, to keep up with it. Without hesitation, Maya retrieved a pair of gardening gloves lying beside a trowel. We can help, she offered, glancing at Jake. He nodded emphatically, seizing another pair of gloves. For the next hour, they weeded and pruned, banishing invasive shoots and snipping off faded blooms. The air hung thick with the perfume of roses and the rich scent of damp soil. Mrs. Gable, moving with a slow, deliberate grace, guided their work, sharing cherished memories of Harold and his beloved garden. He built this birdhouse, she recounted, pointing towards a cheerfully painted structure suspended from a branch. Spent weeks perfecting it, making sure it was just right for the wrens. He possessed such a tender heart. Jake, normally restless and easily bored, listened intently, his gaze fixed on Mrs. Gable. A wave of warmth washed over Maya, a sense of connection and purpose she hadn't anticipated. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in vibrant strokes of apricot and lavender, the garden looked infinitely more vibrant. Mrs. Gable stepped back, her eyes sparkling. Thank you, both of you. This means more than words can express. Maya squeezed Mrs. Gable's hand. We should be the ones thanking you. For your forgiveness. And for the stories, Jake chimed in. They were incredible. Well, Mrs. Gable responded, her smile widening, perhaps you'll visit again sometime. I have countless more stories waiting to be told. We'd like that very much, Maya replied, sharing a meaningful glance with Jake. A silent pact formed between them. They would strive to be better neighbors. They would become friends. The garden, bathed in the fading golden light, stood as a vibrant testament to their newfound commitment.